Good morning, YouTube campers. Today's project, hello. Today's project is probably going to be the most useless video I've ever made. It's going to be about, well, replacing a dryer. To people not in the business, it's called an accumulator dryer, receiver dryer, or accumulator receiver. If you're talking to another technician or a mechanic, if you mention the word dryer, they know you're talking about an air conditioning dryer. Whatever name they go by. Parts books call them both accumulators and receiver dryer. They have a desiccant bag in them that keeps the moisture out, and these do fail, and when they do fail, they usually take compressor out too. Now mine hasn't failed here, and I made a common mistake that a lot of guys in the business do, and even some people that aren't in the business. The wintertime, I didn't use the air conditioning, and of course the compressor's about 8 or 9 years old, and the Freon leaks out a little bit. Usually it'll leak out around the front compressor shaft seal, which is quite common on an older compressor because it doesn't get any heat to it, it doesn't get any oil on it. You know, they kind of shrink up during the winter time, so they allow a little bit of Freon to seep out. Well, in my infinite wisdom, I figured I'd better put some AC dye, which shows up under a fluorescent black light, in the system. Now, having forgotten that I did this about a year ago or 2 years ago, I did it again. So what I did in effect is I over-oiled the system. So when the compressor, you know, once it gets going and gets hot now, when it kicks on again during the heat of the day, you hear a loud grinding clunk, which means it's trying to pump oil. And a compressor really isn't made to pump oil, it's made to pump Freon. So, you gotta excuse me, it's early yet. And so I added more oil. In either case, a lot of this happens out in the field when somebody doesn't put a tag on it stating they've added oil. And the next mechanic you take it to, he doesn't remember or know that oil got added, and after a while too much oil goes in, and then you start having failures. Now the reason I say this is a useless video is because people in the business already know this. They know how to do a dryer. It's not the end of the world. You do a dryer anytime you change a compressor. Anytime you open the system up, you have to replace the dryer. So having the equipment to evacuate the Freon, now I know people are going to be hardheads and they're just going to let it blow into the atmosphere. You're not going to have a reclaiming machine. I do have one, and I will be using it. You will need a vacuum pump, and you will need a couple of the tools to undo the spring lock connections. So in either case, you're either going to go at this and muddle through it. If you're doing a compressor, you're also going to need to do an orifice tube, which the orifice tube needs to be replaced, and I'll give some clues as to that in a little bit. I will not be replacing the orifice tube. There's no reason for it. Now I'm putting a dryer in just to remove the oil from the dryer and whatever the reclaiming machine will pull out. So I think I'm about 2 ounces over, maybe 3 total. So anyway, if a compressor fails, the system would need to be flushed. You'd have to put a new dryer in, new orifice tube, and like I said, the orifice tube replaces the early style expansion valves, and maybe some cars still have an expansion valve, which then would have to be replaced during that too. So like I said, a dryer would have to be replaced anytime the system gets opened up, which is what we're going to do today. So let's get right to it here, and I'll show you that this part right here is the AC dryer, which hooks up to the evaporator and to the low pressure line going to the compressor. So here's a new dryer that I ordered, got it in, and it's a fairly straightforward job. It's not the end of the world, but I am going to have to get the machine out here to hook that up and start sucking out the Freon. So we'll continue on. Let me get my tools out and my equipment ready. I've got my canopy set up, so I'm not going to be boiled to death today. I can take my time and do this as the day goes on, and it's going to be a couple hours anyway between reclaiming and then once I put it in, then it'll have to go under a vacuum for at least an hour. And we're not high in humidity, so an hour is going to be real good. Anyway, we'll continue on at that point. Alright, so what I'm doing first here is I've got my refrigerant recovery machine out here, and this is an old machine. This is probably about, oh God, at least 30 years old, and it still works. What I'm doing right now is I'm vacuuming out the filter chamber, which this machine's been sitting a very long time, and you know, they do leak out and they get some vapor in there. Now, some of these can be purchased relatively cheap for, you know, from business going out of business, or they're upgrading a machine to a newer one, which gives a measured charge, and, you know, it goes through the cycles of continually going through another reclaiming cycle, which what happens is after you reclaim the first time around, the dryer and lines will freeze up. When that freeze melts, it turns back into vapor, Freon vapor, and then the machine needs to restart again to get that out. If it freezes up again and the pressure builds up, the machine will sense it, it'll do it again, it'll do it in stages. So those are newer machines. This one here, you have to manually keep turning it on until you're finally, it'll run it into a slight vacuum, and if it doesn't go back up again and stays in that vacuum, you're done, you've gotten all the Freon out. So, you know, if you're into doing this kind of stuff, it might behoove you to look around and find an old used machine like this. They work, and you know, you can reuse, well, if you've got a couple of recoveries in the bottle, you can reuse the Freon, but just make sure that it's pure 134A and not mixed with R12 or some other kind of hokey Freon that they used way back when the conversions were going on. So you want the pure Freon. Now, I'm not buying a new filter for this thing. The filters back, the last time I bought one in business was around 2004, I think, 2003 maybe, and they were already $85 for a filter back then, and I'm not getting with Snap-on. They can kiss my goddamn ass. So, gonna do that, and then of course you need R12 gauges to work with these old machines, and what you have to do is you've got to get a fitting like this so that you can dual purpose it. You know, if you need an R12 gauge set or a 134 gauge set. Now, almost everything is running 134, so this, my gauge set, which has the, you know, adaptable valves that you can open and close, which are a lot nicer than the standard, but if the standard, you know, they work fine too. So once I get this thing vacuumed down a little bit, and well, the sun's coming over the roof already, I'll start to reclaim the Freon, and we'll go through that. Again, like I said, this is probably not the greatest thing in the world for a shade tree mechanic to do, but I know there's going to be a lot of hardheads out there that are going to want to do it anyway, so we might as well go through this step by step, and if I can give you any kind of advice that'll help you get along with it and do a better job than just hacking it up and putting things together without, you know, even the vacuum pumps, you can buy them at Harbor Freight, relatively cheap. You're gonna have to vacuum out a system. You do not want moisture and air in the system. That doesn't cool, and it's gonna mess up the internals. So if you're not gonna go and get a vacuum pump, in the very least, and a proper set of gauges, and all you want to do is shoot little cans in with a low pressure line hookup where you don't know what your pressures are, stop right there, nix set. You're going to do more damage in the long run. Anyway, we'll continue on in a little bit. Okay, so while we're waiting on the machine to reclaim the Freon, let me hit on a few things here. What we're going to be dealing with is called a spring lock connector, which is this thing right here. Now there's a spring in there that needs to be opened up to allow that line to come off. In other words, it's not bolted together, it's just a spring lock. And what you will need is you will need these tools which open up, and they will go around with a collar towards the spring lock. In other words, they will go like that around there, and then you will push in until it releases. Now I'm not going to do it right now because I still have Freon in the system. Okay, we'll get that off of there. One-handed job. Now, a little trick here is a lot of these get a lot of crap in them, and they get a lot of rust and what have you. So take some penetrating oil and just take a nozzle and just shoot that in there. And then if you have compressed air, which is always nice to have if you do this type of work, go in there and blow that out. That also pushes the oil up in there a little bit more. And then we'll just give it another blast there. Okay, and let that sit. Now, if the spring is rusted really bad in there and it comes apart or breaks, you can buy the spring separately. You don't have to buy the whole hose. Springs are different sizes, and they're not very expensive at all. I mean, just a couple bucks, you know. Maybe if you can get one from a guy like me, I've got a whole kit of them, and you know, I'd probably sell you one for $1. But I haven't been buying parts like that in a long time since I gave up the business, and so I don't know what the going price on everything is. Now, as to the orifice tube, you will have a high side hose, and there will be a crimp in that hose. Let me see if I can find it here. It might be, no, it's not on the other side. Where's the damn crimp? Yeah, I know it has one. Oh, it's down at the bottom there. Okay, we can't see that. In either case, the orifice tube goes in. When you disconnect the hose, the orifice tube will go in that up until the crimp. You'll see the crimp. There's always the orifice tube before the crimp. So, oops, sorry about that. The problem is getting them out. Now they make a special tool to pull them. The tool doesn't work worth a shit. What happens is the O-ring on the orifice tube tends to hang in there. You know, it's just frozen in. So what you do is you take a little propane torch and you get a pair of hemostats or long needle nose pliers. I prefer hemostats because they grab a hold better and they go down in there. You grab a hold of this tube, and now let me take a quick go at it here. Geez, I've been waxing the bike a little at a time, and now it's in the way in here. But let's see here. I got this stuff. Okay, there's the tubes. All right, let's turn some light on. There we go. Okay, so this is what an orifice tube looks like. They're going to be different colors. They have the double O-rings on them. That's where they get stuck. Now, they go in to the tube that way from the open end, and you just push it until it hits the dimpled part of the tube, and that's it, you know. So when you're getting them out, like I said, a little propane torch, just enough heat while you're, you know, pulling on it, and it'll come right out. I mean, they're not that bad. Now, they do come in different colors, so if you're going to replace one, usually the auto parts store will have a listing as to the application to your particular vehicle, and they will know what color it takes. You know, usually if you pull them out, you'll see what color they are. Now, sometimes these oranges will turn a funky color and look more like a brown. So again, you know, just double check, make sure you're putting the right one in there, because these have a metered tube in there. And the different colors have different metered tubes, so you need to have the right one for the right vehicle. And again, the spring locks, these are the spring locks. If you can see them, they're just a spring. And oh, good grief, alright, that bag was open upside down. Hey, brilliant. That's the kind of shit you do when you're in a shop, you get busy. But it's just a spring, a rotating spring, that goes up inside that, what we're going to release later. So there's a little bit of history as to what you're going to need to do. And I'm going to see if we've got most of the Freon out, if I need to restart the machine yet. The other side of the dryer is just bolted together. It's got a big nut on it and everything. I got my wrenches sitting there. I just pulled them out and stuck them there. So, and then there's a clamp holding it onto the body with that foam around it. And I do suggest you put the foam back on it. A lot of people say, well, it rots the bottom of it out. Yeah, but it won't rot it out quick enough. These are very thick and solid metal. By the time that rots out, you should have replaced that dryer a long, long time ago. So, okay, what else did we... Oh yeah, I wanted to mention on that spring lock, there's usually this retaining clip, which, you know, goes over this to hold them together. In case the spring lock fails, at least the line won't blow all the way off. So remember to take that off before you try to disconnect it. So that's it for now. The machine is almost done. Alright, it's still running. We're almost down to 0 now. And then, yep, the dryer is ice cold, so we know we got freezing going on in there. Once the machine cools down, stops pumping, what we're going to do is we're just going to let it sit, and we're going to let that de-ice and build up vapor again, and then we'll turn the machine on to do the second cycle, or the second run of evacuation. We'll do that until we go into a mild vacuum here, and once we see a mild vacuum and it stays there, we're done reclaiming Freon. Alright, and we'll go on from there in a little bit. Alrighty, I've done 3 passes, or maybe 4. It's holding at a vacuum, about 5 inches vacuum, 5 inches heligram. And let's remove our line. Alright, still a little cold, but that's alright. Might be a little residual, but not much. And what you want to do here is, on these spring lock, twist the line a little bit to loosen it up and push it together. Then put your tool on there, like that, and get it in there, and you gotta really push that in. This one is definitely not wanting to come. Up. Whew. Well, that's the biggest one I got, and I know it fits, but what's going on here? Yeah, that's sometimes what you get into. These aftermarket dryers sometimes have a little bit of a different. Alright. There we go. Alright, pushing it in now. Yeah, these springs can be, you know, they've been on there, they've been wet a lot, they're made of metal, and they're yep. I'm not getting the spring depressed. Alright, I guess I gotta stop this, check to see if I have another tool. I think I got some other ones. Anyway, alright, hang tight. Alrighty. Yeah, it was a white one. It just needed a little bit of persuasion to get in there. And pull it apart slowly, just in case you got residual. Take your clamp off, take your tool off rather. Just needed to be pushed in to get up under that spring. And pull it out. There you go. That releases that. Now, what we want to do, let's disconnect this line so we don't have dye. That yellow is the dye, so you don't really want to get that all over the place in case you have to check for a leak. Put that line out of the way, and then that's the nice thing about steel dryers. They don't melt together with everything, because the aluminum ones with the dissimilar metals, when they've been on a car for a long time, you end up having the steel and the aluminum weld together, and then it becomes a welded process that, well, it won't come apart right. You'll end up replacing the evaporator in this case, or the hose if you got a hose going to it, and the dryer. So the steel ones are actually a lot nicer and a lot better. So we back that off, and even though I lubricate these threads when I do a job like that, like a compressor job, there's still a lot of rust there. It's just the cold and the hot that water, it's an air conditioning system. So we take our little bracket off. Don't forget to drop your screw, which I didn't. Put that over there. Put this over here. Now we can take the rest of the dryer off. And there it is. So what you want to do is I've put this on. The original one was glued on, and of course the glue is no good anymore. Yeah, some of it is. Well, it's been on there a long time. I just use a plastic wire tie to put them on there, and you can get your orientation pretty good with a clamp if you put everything together beforehand. And also replace the O-rings. They give you new O-rings with these. Do replace them all. I just dropped a shitload of oil, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a measurement, okay, the bottom of this, hold on a minute here, we'll go this way, and we'll turn it this way. Maybe we can see what we're doing here. Yeah, okay. I got a little measuring cup, just a shitty old measuring cup, so I can drain the oil into the measuring cup, and the bottom is still iced up, if you can see that. Still iced up, so I might have waited a little bit longer, but there's no real residual coming out of that. So I want to see how much oil is in the dryer. Give me a rough idea of now again, if you're doing this as a compressor job or any other replacement, remember about an ounce of oil is added into the dryer ahead of time. Each component in the system has a certain amount of oil that is required, and then a total amount of oil. Now, refrigerant oil, it'll state here, well, let's see. Well, it gives Freon, which is 2 pounds 6 ounces on this car, and it tells you what kind of oil, which is pretty much PAG 45 on a Ford. And you'll have to check. You can call the auto parts store and find out what the amounts are. But you should add oil. Just, you know, you can add it later if you have an oil charging kit for your gauges, but that's about it there. Not going to go crazy with that. So we got roughly an ounce coming out of there, which is fine. And then the reclaiming machine, that also has a little cup in it, which has a purge, and that looked like maybe half an ounce. So we got 1.5 ounces out of the system, which is great. I'm not going to add any more because I had too much oil in the system to begin with. That's the reason I'm doing it. But that's not the reason you would do it with the, a repair. So anyway, let me start replacing O-rings here and putting the new one in, and then we're going to go into a vacuum. Okie dokie. Got the new dryer bolted in. That's just a nut and bolt. And a point of interest here is I use R12 mineral AC oil to lubricate the threads and the O-rings. This oil is not hydroscopic. PAG oil is hydroscopic. It absorbs moisture. That's not what you want when you have fittings. So, lubricating the O-rings a little bit, you just put a little on there, a little in where it goes together, like that and that. And you can also put some down in there into the spring to keep that together a little bit better, and it'll go slip on there quicker. And all you do with these is you just get them lined up and you push them together till you hear the click and you can't pull them apart again. That's it. And then you put your little safety clip on there, plug in your wiring. Now I've got to hook up my hose again for the radiator, which is over here. That damn thing is always in the way of the what do you call it, the I gotta get a clamp or a pair of pliers to do that. It's always in the way of the gauges, so no big deal. Just plug everything else in, and now we hook up the vacuum pump and we let it run for an hour. And then we'll get back into charging it up. So okay, as an aside here, the vacuum pump is giving up the ghost for me, and after 40 years, it's at least 41 years old. I had a little problem with it on the last vehicle I did, which was trying to help a buddy of mine out, and we replaced a hose on his truck, and a dryer, and then I noticed it was having a little bit of trouble bringing the vacuum down, and I thought we had a leak, and then I let it run, and well, it finally, it brought it down. So today I've really thought, holy crap, the thing isn't coming down very good at all, and I was checking it with the gauges off the system, and it would go down very slow, just even with only the gauges hooked up to it. It took way too long. So it's been running now for about 2.5 hours, which is more than necessary, but it's taking that long to bring this down to a acceptable vacuum. And I got on eBay because I do my own stuff, and I found a pump. Now it's not anything like this pump is. This thing here is a professional pump that oh, am I zoomed in? I am. Ah, jeez. Okay, so my head looked big there, didn't it? Anyway, this pump here is more of a professional pump. Let's try this again. And I no longer need anything like that because I don't use this stuff. Maybe once every couple of years, if that. It's only if I have a problem with one of my cars, really, or I help a buddy out, which I have very few of them. So yeah, I got on eBay, ordered one, got it for $47, and I noticed that there are complete kits, a vacuum pump, gauges. Now they're not the nice gauge ends and everything else, they're just the pop-on, pop-off gauges and everything. They're not going to be top-notch quality, but the whole kit with a little case, that holds the pump, the gauges, all that crap, for around 87 to 93 bucks. That's a pretty damn good deal if you're going to do this kind of stuff yourself at home. Of course, the reclaiming machine, that's a whole different story, but as far as the vacuum pumps go, now these are quarter horse, 3 CFM to 3.5 CFM vacuum pumps, which this is a lot bigger than that. I think this is half horse and or a third maybe. Well, no, I think it's a half. I got to look at that, but it can be gotten cheaper. So anyway, I think this pretty much concludes everything. Now, once I take that vacuum pump off, I'm going to hook it up to the Freon tank, charge it up, and I'm going to go by pressures, basically because I can't take that big tank out of there and put it on a scale. Now the newer reclaiming machines, you can put a measured charge in by dial a charge, which is a lot nicer. If you put 2 pounds 6 ounces in, which is what the car calls for, and you just blow it right into the car, and boom, you're right on the money. Now I do have a scale, ounce scale, made for Freon, and I do have a 30-pound can of Freon, but I would rather take what I put into the machine and put it back in the car, because that machine being that old, it does tend to slowly leak out. If it sits in there a year or maybe 2, whatever, the Freon will be mostly gone. So I might as well use that up, and I'm pretty good with charging with pressure. So anyway, there it is. That's the dryer install. If I left anything out or you have any questions, let me know in the comments section. Like I said, this is not going to interest a whole lot of people, but it's just something to do. This Saturday, I'm not going for a ride. Just don't feel like it. And, I'll play with the car and get it done today. So I got plenty of time. Anyway, that's it for my very, whatever. All right, bye-bye.